the introductions of most of the women on this panel, many of us have worked for and with Cathy Hughes. So number one, that is a hand clap to her. Personally, I worked with Cathy Hughes at WHUR. And then at WOL, she afforded me the opportunity to be the program director under WOL for some period of time. And then moving on to WMMJ for a few years. So my relationship with her is one of admiration, certainly for what it is that she's done in radio. And personally, it was a wonderful experience, bottom line.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
oh.
Okay.
I keep stepping on people. Sorry about that, Scharmaine.
Right.
But
You
if
go
I
right
may, thank you, love. So Robyn Holden, I met you when you were the program director at WOL, and I was this young girl, that was my first job in radio. Cathy Hughes was such a force in the radio industry. I mean, and it only got bigger and bigger. And just watching this powerful, beautiful little powerhouse, Cathy Hughes, you know, I was in sales. I was actually hired as a salesperson because I had absolutely no history, no background in radio, although I wanted to be put on the air right away. But she hired me, and you know, she said, okay, you can do, and I mean, we're going so far back, it was Cathy and Dewey Hughes. Right. And they said, okay, you can be in sales, but you can do some voiceovers. And that's when my whole voiceover career started, and they let me on the air. I started doing some sitting in midday, and I just have always admired Cathy. I mean, it didn't matter who the business was. Cathy always felt like, yes, this is an AM station in this big city. We should get as much money as any of the other radio stations in the Washington, D.C. market, you know, where at a time, well, actually, it hasn't changed much, when you're Black radio, a lot of the businesses want to look at you and say, okay, we're going to give you less. Cathy was never here for that. And I've always just admired her strength, her power, and her dignity as a woman, a Black woman in business.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to say that I had the pleasure of working for Radio 1, Cathy Hughes, for about 25 years. I worked with her in Baltimore and then WMMJ, and it was truly a family experience. And I spent most of my career in the Washington, D.C. market working for Radio 1, and it was definitely family.
Okay, Sherry, you had a question you were going to ask the panel, I think it was.
Yes, actually, they're answering it right now. I was going to ask who to tell us about your first radio experience here in Washington, D.C., and who gave you that opportunity.
Are you asking me?
You know what? I think maybe we should almost do it chronologically. I think I may be the most senior person, and I started at WHUR in 1973. And I was hired by Bob Nighthawk Terry and the general manager, right? Bob Nighthawk Terry.
Right.
And John Paul Simpkins was the GM, and Andre Perry was the PD, and Jesse Fax was my music director. But I want to shout out, first of all, I want to thank Sherry, Greg, and Grover, and also David behind the scenes for putting us all together. It's a formidable group of women and individuals to get together at the same time. So salute to the contributions that every single broadcaster has made to the community in Washington, D.C. and beyond. When I started, there was no internet. So it was just the DMV area. But in addition to Cathy Hughes, who we have already acknowledged and should acknowledge until we had no breath. There were some dynamic women like Niani Kilkenny in public affairs, Susan Perry, who held down the station and later married Andre Perry. I don't know how she did that, but Susan Perry. There was a lot of dynamic women behind the scenes whose names never get cited, like ours, because we were on the radio all the time. But salute to those women as well, and just wanted to acknowledge Bob Nighthawk Terry and those individuals. 1973, 96.3 WHUR.
Mhm.
If I could, I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in real quick to give Ms. Hughes her kudos, because I think with most people in radio,
You okay, Olivia?
with most people in radio, you kind of want to become syndicated. I know that was one of the goals for myself. And I honestly would never have a national name if it wasn't for Alfred and Miss Hughes. I came to DC in 1992. I worked at WHUR for a couple of years, went to Boston, and then I came back. And I was here for like 3 years. And then in 1999, the morning show was syndicated, and it kind of started slow and just kind of blew up from there. And so I'm very thankful for Miss Hughes, not only for the trailblazer that she is and the things that she's been able to do to allow us to be who and what we are, but also that she actually gave me my big break. If I were to really look at it and think about it, she put me on. So thank you, Miss Hughes.
Mhm. Well, I'm going to jump in because shortly after Dyana Williams started things out as a female radio personality at WHUR, I came in 1975, and I was recruited by Andre Perry. Nighthawk Terry was not there at that time. I think that's sort of when the transition happened. Andre Perry saw me at heard me, excuse me, heard me at a radio station, and then started calling me to recruit me to come to Washington, D.C. Now, being from New York City, I didn't know much about Washington, D.C., other than the fact that it was quote unquote chocolate city. And so that alone allowed me to be able to pack my bags and come, because I wanted to see what Chocolate City was all about. And then, of course, 45 or almost 50 years later, I'm still here and loving it. So my first experience at WHUR in Washington on radio was through Andre Perry.
Okay. Candy Shannon, what about your first job in DC? I think you're muted, Candy. Candy, I think you're muted. Can everybody hear Candy?
No.
Okay, Linda Reynolds, can you tell us about your first experience in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, I can. I started in 1981. I was a student at Howard University. I started out as an intern, actually, and I was put in several different departments, one being production. And while I was in production, I did a little playing around with my voice. Jesse Fax heard my voice. Now, the funny thing about all of this is I never wanted to be in radio. It just kind of happened. Sometimes things happen to you, you know. It was a good thing, though. And from there, he put me on the midnight till 6 a.m. shift Sunday morning. Did that for about a year. I moved around a couple of shifts, and then I ended up on the air. So Jesse Fax, may he rest in peace, is responsible for me going on the air at WHUR.
So is Candy unmuted yet? Candy, can you hear us? Okay, Grover, why don't you, Sherry, go with your question that you had coming up next.
Okay, so we're talking about the first position on air in radio. I remember back in radio when we had a lot of versatility. Remember, we could play early on, we could play anything we wanted. More or less, we brought our own albums to the station and we played music. And then later on, we were given a playlist. Anybody remember those days?
Yes.
They were so, it was really good to have that freedom, but I can understand too why it was changed to the playlist.
So Sherry, I'd like for you to let everybody know some of your past history, because I think I learned a lot throughout this panel, putting it together about you that I didn't know. So why don't you just give us a brief rundown of how you got started and some of the things, some of the stations that you worked at?
I got started at let me take it back. I got started in 1968 at WUST AM radio. My mentor was Soul Papa and Moon Man. I don't know if any of these names mean anything to anybody.
Yes.
Okay. We were high school students who were interested in career in broadcast media. And so Soul Papa started this program for us, and we reported school news every Saturday. We left WUST and went to WOOK. It was WOOK was AM at the time, and that's when they had Leon the Lover on there, Ernie Fields. I don't know if you heard of Ernie Fields. There was, oh gosh, Terrible Turk. I know you remember Turk.
Oh, yeah.
They were some of the guys that were on there, and we would do drops for them as high school students. After that, I left radio and I went into television at WDCA TV channel 20, and I was the assistant public affairs director and producer of Petey Green's Washington and some of the other public affairs programs, Face to Face with Walter Fauntroy, things like that. So I was there for several years, but then an opportunity came up at WPGC Radio, and a friend of mine called and said, well, come over here, public affairs director position is open. So I went there. I was public affairs director, but I ended up on the air with the talk show. And then on the air when they did a love songs at midnight to 6 a.m. So I did that as well. WPGC, I'm not sure if you know or not, was top 40 radio when I was there. But in 85, they switched over to WCLY. They changed the call letters and the programming, the music programming. So that lasted maybe 2 years. And then they went back to WPGC, but it was no longer top 40. It was urban radio. And that's what it is now. So then I left WPGC and went to Extra 104, oldie station, for a couple of years. Started my family and needed, more flexibility. So then I went on to WDJY, where I worked. Scharmaine, yeah, I was there. I think Scharmaine was 7 to midnight, 3 to 7. I don't know, but I relieved Scharmaine at WDJY. Remember Scharmaine? I think it was OK 100.
God. I thought that was you, and I'm just so surprised. Hey, Sherry. And yes, it was middays, and it was 7 to midnight. I did both. That was my time slot for the most part.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did midnights. VJ was the program director then.
Okay.
And something.
Brute. Then it was Brute.
It was Brute. Okay.
Brute Bailey after
Brute
that.
Bailey. Mm-hmm. And one thing that was really good about that is that there were all female announcers on at that time, except for the morning show. Remember? Was that Bree Taylor on?
Bree, that's right. Bree Taylor.
Felicia Ledesma.
Oh, yes.
Remember Felicia?
Oh, my God. You're really taking me back with great memories.
And then you. And then I was on after you. I was doing midnight to 6.
Wow. That takes me to a question that we're going to ask coming up later, but as far as having that many women on a radio station back in the day, that was sort of historic to have so many women. Usually you have an all-male lineup back in the day. So all of you women were on WDJY at the same time.
Yes.
Yes, at one point, we sure were.
Historic and significant. When I arrived at WHUR, there have been 2 women before me, and I think we have to mention, especially those of us who worked at 96.3. The first woman on the air at WHUR, to my knowledge, was Alfie Williams. And the next woman after her was Diane Quander. Diane went on to write the lyrics to Caught Up in the Rapture for Neil Baker.
Yeah, I remember that.
When I arrived,
Oh.
Diane and I were the two women on the air. And it was a thing in the 70s about putting women back to back. It was unheard of. Of course, these days, it's not a big thing to have women following each other, but there was a time there was great reticence about having two female voices back to back. I know when I was Ebony Moonbeams, there was a good separation between my shift and Diane's.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I remember those days.
One of the things that Sherry mentioned, or the question that she asked, and that was in relationship to programming your own music. Well, one of the things that was such a unique experience, particularly in the 70s, is that we did have that opportunity to do that. That's number one. And in doing so, we were able to share our individual personalities. That's what the key was with us being able to bring in our own music. We were able to share our personalities and to make that, I'm sorry, it's my phone. And to be able to make whatever statement to the community that who we were, what we were about, and also being able to connect with them being able to share with us what they wanted to hear, what kind of energy they were feeling, and we were able to reflect that. One of the things that I did not like was when they started to put in the rotation, when the music changed from the OJs, when there were positive messages, to developing a series of the top 10 songs when it was all negative. Now, I hope that all of you understand exactly what I'm saying, because the music changed at a certain point in time when everything that we were hearing and that our young people were hearing were negative energies. And there was no way for anyone else to break through and have a positive experience with your own community. So it, sort of a dichotomy at one point when we were able to provide those positive images and the music that was available, and then being scripted to the point that the only thing that we could play were the B words when women were being defaced and those kinds of things. So fortunately now, me at WPFW, I am able to, I don't have a script. So I am back where I started in radio, being able to have positive messages about love, being able to share with the audience their personal experience by them being able to reach out and say, Robyn, I would like to hear Nancy Wilson. I would like to hear Joe Williams. I want to hear some B.B. King. I want to hear Phyllis Hyman. And I'm able to respond to that. So that is very important to me. So anybody else have any feelings about how the music changed?
Am I on? Does my mic work? Okay.
Yes.
So I had a problem, lady. Sorry. It was working, but once we went live, for some reason it stopped. But it's working now. Oh, Robyn just really reminds me. But I would like to say I had 5 years at HUR, not in the very beginning when with 365 degrees of blackness was at the Dyana, and I have a sister who went to Howard. I came to visit, and that was the station to listen to. I'm from Detroit. I never could quite understand 5 hours of Love Me, Baby, 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 Quiet Storm. But hey, that was, everybody knew the Quiet Storm. But I have to say, Howard has, WHUR and Howard has, always, when I was there, this was when the music was changing, as Robyn alluded to, when there was a lot of suits in the business, part of that urban slight rap turned into a different thing. Hip hop kind of split into different areas, but HUR being a university-owned station, I think, never seemed to go that way. We were programmed, we had a list we had to play. And like Robyn, it's a delight to be back where we can pick what we want to play. Everybody here would love to be able to do what we can do, I'm sure. And I came from a station in Detroit where I was able to do that also. So at the beginning and probably the other end of my career, I have this opportunity. But it has truly been a journey to be a woman in radio. And every single woman here, I don't really don't think we want to turn this into, and you know what so-and-so did, or name names or all that kind of thing. But I know each and every one of us has had an experience where you almost don't believe somebody either said that to you, or you just know something's going on, or you're not given the opportunities that you know you've earned by your work ethic, by the response you get from the audience. And yet, slowly but surely, it really is changing. So again, thanks to Greg and Grover and Sherry and all the folks behind that really put all these people together. I think, Scharmaine, you and I never ran into each other working anywhere, I don't think, have we?
Well, I believe that even though we might not have known each other, we knew each other from the air.
Exactly.
And knowing, the name Candy Shannon is it's like a listener. Because they're listening to you, they feel like as though they know you. And I did listen to you. I listened to Triscina Gray. I listened to basically all of the females on this panel, the women on this panel. So it's been a pleasure. And I just wanted to say that the music really, really made a difference in my life in coming up. I used to listen to, we had such positive music. James Brown, Don't Be a Dropout. Don't be a dropout. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Keep on D-Train. And they can go on and on and on. And speaking of women in radio, I was the first Black female radio personality in the state of New Jersey. I was born in Newark, raised in East Orange. And I used to listen to WBLS. That was the New York radio station with Frankie Crocker. And I'm sure a lot of people probably know of Frankie. And it was Buster Soares. I was working for the county, the Essex County, and Reverend Buster Soares introduced me to WNJR. And from there, my career just totally took off. I did all time slots. Well, midday, I did gospel, midday, afternoon drive. And one day, my former coworker, Leslie, she invited me over to WBLS to meet Frankie, and Frankie invited me into the studio. And my goodness, who would know? People were, he was taking applications for hundreds of women to work with him. And I'll never forget, one day I was going, he invited me back the next day and the next day and put me in the studio to do drops and so forth. And one day I got a phone call. My mom said, Frankie Crocker's on the phone. And I just wanted to fall out. I could not believe it. And he offered me the job. He told me to think about it. And of course, there was no question that I would work. And I had the opportunity to work with all the radio personalities that I used to listen to coming up. And that was Vi Higginson, who was definitely someone that I admired and was influential in my life. And she was so positive. As she went on to be a producer for Mama I Want to Sing, the Broadway play. And I had an opportunity to interview her when she came to the DC market. And so it's just been ongoing. I used to want to be a female Von Harper, who did The Quiet Storm. And I had the opportunity to work with Vinnie Brown, program director, and do The Quiet Storm when Von took ill, and since has passed on. And working with Wendy Williams and the Steve Harvey and all of that. And then I came to DC, and it's just been quite an experience and just a great career for me. And that's basically what I want to say. So,
Okay, I want to open up the discussion about gender bias and how it affected you ladies, or if it affected you ladies in your careers. Like, if you all would like to talk to anybody, I would like to actually address this to Olivia Fox, because I know just for myself, I used to listen to you all the time on the Russ Parr Morning Show. And I understand it was a Russ Parr Morning Show, but I tuned in just to hear you. I really was a big fan of Olivia Fox. So if you could just, I mean, not to say that you experienced any gender bias on Russ Parr, but just being on the air with a male, a partner on the male, what was that whole experience like?
Well, I think I was in a, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I think I was in a very unique situation when I worked on the morning show, locally as well as syndicated with Russ. It was more like a partnership. It wasn't so much like the big male, host and then the sidekick laugh track chick,
Right.
which I did not and would not be, because I actually was a radio personality, went to school, moved to many, many cities, worked many, many jobs, lost many jobs and rehired for other jobs. So I wasn't, I felt like, if I was going to be in a situation, in a dual situation, I wanted to make certain that it was one where I could be me. So I didn't really have an issue with that. But early in my career, absolutely, and I'm going back, when you used to send your tape and your picture and your resume through the mail to apply for a job. But with the women, they always wanted a picture. And I never really could understand that, because I was like, it's radio. Why do you need my picture? Till finally some program director in some small city said, we have to make sure that you're marketable. And I really, as my career went on, I kind of got the grasp of what that meant. Whereas it wasn't the same for men. And I still don't think it is, which is unfortunate. But, just going through my career, I'm sure there are many of you here who probably were doing the same job as your male counterparts, whether it be in the day part that you were in, or perhaps the day part that they were in. And you just didn't get the money that you would, hope that you would be compensated, not to get paid more, but just to get paid what's fair. And so I had that situation happen a couple of times. I know after I left the Washington, D.C. market, after I had my daughter, I went to the Tampa Bay area. I was actually the first Black female to host their own morning show in the Tampa Bay area. But it was funny because prior to getting the call to come, one of my very, very good friends in the industry, they called him first. And I don't think they knew that we knew one another. And he wasn't able to take the job because, for whatever reason, he had something else going on. And so then they called me, and it turned out that they offered him, like $70,000 more to do the same job. So, that kind of gives you an idea of what my experience has been. But I took the job, and I blew it up, and I did the damn thing. And
yes,
that was really important to me, because I came from a morning team. So it was really important for me to go to a market and stand on my own with my name, and be able to compete and do very well. And so that was that.
So Triscina Gray, are you there? Can you hear us? Triscina? Did we lose her?
Yes, hi.
Yeah, I just wanted you to chime in, first of all, I want everybody to know just how historic your run at WHUR was. I mean, you were there for over 20 years, is that correct?
Close to 30.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Tell us about that. I mean, that's historic.
Thank you. Well, basically, what brought me to the area, I was out of radio. Well, let me just go back. I started out in Connecticut. How I was introduced to radio. I was in a 6-week summer program going into my senior year in high school, exploring the campus of Wesleyan University, where I was for 6 weeks to focus on theater. And then I heard this loud music and went and looked inside, and it was this radio station. This guy was jamming, and his name, Bobby Thomas. It's amazing how things can circle around, because years later, Bobby Thomas ended up being here in DC. So he said, hey, you're gonna be here for 6 weeks. Why don't you do the weather? That was my first exposure to radio. And then after that, went to college. Guess who I see on the campus of Adelphi University? My nickname is Cece. Cece, what you doing here? Bobby Thomas. That's just amazing. It's crazy. I started doing radio on college campus, and I was so in tune to it that when I would go home during my intersessions, I reached out to WYBC, owned and operated by Yale University. They had this program for inner city where they allowed you to just have that voice in the Black community. So I volunteered during the intersessions. And then after I graduated, I stepped out on faith and went to New Haven, WNHC. Jazzy James Jordan gave me my first radio job. I started in news. I became a news director. And then he said, have you ever thought about being a radio personality? I said, no. He said, well, I want you to try it. He put me on. I was nervous as I don't know what. I was trying to be this voice that wasn't mine. And because I was like, 1340 AM thinking I had to be a voice instead of being who I am. So as my career progressed, I realized, you have to be who you are. You have to be you, no one else. So I did middays, and then only for a year, and I stepped out on faith. I always wanted to go to California, went out to California for a vacation, circulated my air tape. Kevin Fleming from KGFJ happened to say, wow, you have some potential here. If you ever move back in the area, look me up. Went back, moved to Los Angeles, California without a job, looked Kevin Fleming up. He's like, wow, I need some holiday fill-in. He hired me at KGFJ in Los Angeles. And I was just, and then about maybe a year or so later, I got a call back to go to the East Coast because my aunt passed. I had one cassette. I brought that one cassette tape to WBLS. DK Kirkland hired me. They relocated me back to New York City, where I worked at WBLS alongside such legendary people as Pat Prescott, Vaughn Harper, Sergio Dean, Fred Buggs. I was like the little sister. I can go on. That was such an amazing experience working at WBLS full time. So then, of course, you have to have thick skin when you're in radio. Growing up with 3 brothers, I just had to have thick skin, and I knew how to be tough. I knew how to negotiate and make my salary what I think it should be, especially when I saw the Caucasian counterparts of those radio stations making XYZ. So I was always steadfast with that. Got out of radio, toured with Vi Higginson's Mama, I Want to Sing. And then I got an opportunity. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward. So after leaving WBLS, they went in a different direction, new program director. I'm like, okay, I'm not giving up. Then BJ Stone at WNJR hired me. So like I said, sometimes you have to be a small fish and make it work for you. Worked around Carlos de Jesus. And then I got a trade magazine, a radio agent, got me a job at WWIN in Baltimore, where Kathy Hughes owned the station. And shortly after, 3 months later, they sold the station. So here I am doing mornings in Baltimore. But at the same time, I had already been doing part-time at WHUR, because before I moved to Baltimore, I would commute from New Jersey to fill in at WHUR. So I was working part-time. I was full-time at WWIN in Baltimore and part-time at WHUR. And I owe that to BK Kirkland. BK Kirkland hired me at WBLS. And then he just so happened to be at WHUR. And then I'm like, I'm out of a job. It just so happened that a midday slot became available. In 1992, I was at WHUR. Middays ever since, close to 30 years. And it's been a blessing working under amazing program directors, dynamic people in radio, including some dynamic women like Lorna Newton, Felicia Ledesma, Charmaine Foster, Angela Stribling, Olivia Fox. We both got at WHUR. We were at WHUR at the same time in 1992. Natalie Case, Jackie Gales Webb, who is still there. Got to give her props for holding it down, for doing Sunday morning gospel for many years. Tracy Luttrell, Renee Nash is still holding it down at WHUR, doing her thing. Oh my goodness. So Karen Campbell, the list goes on. So it's been a blessing. I don't know if I answered the question, but I just took a trip down memory lane, and the journey has been amazing.
Triscina.
Yes.
Didn't you take my place?
Candy, I have to say something. In radio, I hate to say it sometimes. What I learned early on as a female radio personality, I always felt the need to embrace female people, female radio personalities when they came into a new situation, because I did not always get that. So I made it a point to embrace, to guide, to lead, and to be an example, and to show love, not hate. Like, hey, we're sisters in radio. You know, like I said, because I know that I didn't get it, I made sure I got it. When I went to WHUR, Candy Shannon, who was holding out afternoons at the time, embraced me. We embraced each other. Candy, I love you so much for giving me so much love and making me feel so welcomed at WHUR. And you know, we said we're going to get together. We still haven't done it. We need to stop.
I know you've got a birthday coming up, so we're going to have to do that.
So, you know, and Robyn, when I met Robyn, the first thing I said to Robyn Holden, I'm like, sister, thank you for paving the way. Did I not, Robyn? I love you, Robyn.
Where is she? Yes, yes.
And I also have to give props to Linda, because when I was in Baltimore, Linda, I don't know if you remember, when I was working at WWIN, you came by. I think you had a history at WWIN at the time, but I met you. We happened to be both from Connecticut. But another interest was theater and commercials. What you did, Linda, was you gave me resources. I'm like, this sister is giving. She's not threatened. She's just like loving. You gave me resources. You gave me a list of agencies in the Baltimore, Maryland area. I'll never forget that. See, these are the kind of people that are on this panel right here. So never had the pleasure of meeting Dyana. Am I saying your name correctly, my sister?
It's Dyana, but I'm very, very aware of you and how you held down the Black community in the DMV and beyond. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that very seldom do we have someone who stays at one broadcast facility for 30 years. Here I'm in, so, you know, so you are legendary in radio, not just Black radio. So while we've not had the opportunity to interact, when you mentioned Jackie Gale Webb, she was on a line. Kathy Hughes and I did an open call in the community. This might have been 1974. And Jackie was on a line, and I interviewed her and recommended her to Miss H to be hired. So I'm very proud that I recognized her talent. And like you, a legendary voice in DC. But literally, if you look at all of us, we're like puzzle pieces. And I'm smiling when I hear the references to Frankie Crocker. Several of us are graduates, PhDs from Frankie Crocker University. I left DC and went to BLS with Frankie Crocker. And I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in the Bronx and Harlem. So it was major to be able to go back and work with truly one of the best in the business, Frankie Crocker, program director, not just of WBLS, and he was on 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. But you know what? We've also mentioned, several people have mentioned my inspiration was Vi Higginson. I grew up in Harlem, so she was the very first Black woman I heard on the radio, and then Lamar Renee. They were the two women on the air at WLIB FM. And something that we should mention when we talk about WHUR and DC radio, very unique market to have so many Black stations in a small geographic area. But we, the word I got from Kathy Hughes is we super served all of these stations. And I was very proud to be the first program director at WMMJ, first PD. It was Kathy Hughes's first FM acquisition. So when I hear several of you reference WMMJ as a station where you dug in, and I feel a tremendous sense of pride because I remember the challenges that Kathy faced when she first purchased that station. And you know, it ain't easy being in the radio game. It's a very competitive business, but everybody on this presentation today, and I want to shout out Felicia Love with the Black Women in Radio organization. Angela and I were trying to figure out when y'all were talking about an award, we were like, an award we don't know about? Charmaine, we were like, wait. But it's Felicia Love who's doing incredible work with the Library of Congress. It's an archive she's putting together, and several of us on this call today are in that. And I think that's, Greg, what you and Grover were referencing. And it's an opportunity for all of us, because Felicia Love is working, it is a labor of love to document her stories and the histories, because as we hear, for all of us, there were significant men involved in helping us navigate our careers. You know, I've heard BK Kirkland, shout out to my brother from WBLS, Vaughn Harper, who physically is not with us, but here we are talking about Vaughn Harper. And I want to shout out one of my mentees when we reference The Quiet Storm, Melvin Lindsay, who was a dear friend of Angela and mine, and probably several of us on this call. He was my mentee when I was at WHUR on my way to WBLS, and the creator of the concept of The Quiet Storm. Here we go again, that lady's name, Kathy Hughes. I'm gonna
So let's bring Angela Stribling into the conversation, because I want to talk about HUR, and Angela, you're at HUR currently. So let's talk about how the heritage of that station and what it means to Washington, D.C.
Ooh,
and one thing, because let me tell you this, Grover and I were talking about the fact that, you know, there were so many women that got their start. Everybody on this panel was at WHUR.
Right. Let me just say this. WHUR was the reason that I started listening to FM radio. And the first voice that I remember hearing was my good friend, Dyana Williams. And I think the first time I heard you, Dyana, was you read a poem of mine. I don't know if you remember. You read a poem of mine, and you had me, girl. I was on cloud nine. Because actually, I was working with Darrell Brooks and Carl Kirkendall with Compared to What during the summers, and you were a guest that night. And Darrell said, "Look, show Dyana your poem." And I showed it to you. You said, "May I read this on the air?" And I said, "Sure." You know, and you read it, and I couldn't wait to get home to hear it. And I stayed up, and like, you were the first voice that I really was in tune to on HUR. But the next voice was Robyn Holden. But I just want to say, Dyana, you've always been an inspiration to me. You've inspired me, even though you weren't around and I didn't hear from you that much, but you were always an inspiration, always encouraged me to be creative. And if you remember, you introduced me to Leela McDowell, which was my first woodworking job. Remember the bed that Leela wanted me to build? It was you who introduced me to Leela. And I saw you on the street, on 18th Street. I don't want to say how long ago that was. But I just want to say, sister, you have always been an inspiration to me. You've always been a big sister to me, and I love you. And I just wanted to let you know how much you have inspired me over the years. But continuing on HUR, the next voice that I remember was Robyn Holden. Robyn's voice after yours, Dion, I heard your voice, and I would try to tune in. I would try to catch Robyn's show whenever. And you guys always played the music. I mean, you guys changed the way I listen to music. I mean, before I was just listening to WOL and okay, but you guys just, you guys would play those album cuts. I mean, artists that it was my vibe, what you guys were playing. It was totally my vibe.
Robyn, didn't you take over my place when I left to go work for Frankie Crocker and BLS? You took over my place over by Columbia Road.
Okay, Robyn,
is she muted?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, I did. And there's one thing I want to say. Dyana Williams, when I came to Washington, D.C., Dyana embraced me. And from that moment on, and we have a personal story that goes back to Columbia Road, where, and I just want to say, I will never, ever forget you, Dyana Williams, the impact that you had on my life and allowing me to stay at her apartment when she moved to Washington, out of Washington, D.C., because I was looking for a place to stay. And Dyana Williams graciously said, Robyn, I'm moving out of town. I have an apartment and you are welcome to rent that apartment while I am gone. So I never had the opportunity in all these years to bring that back to you. So I want to thank you and let you know that you were impacted my life in a very, very positive way, beyond just being a sister in radio, but having someone that reached out to look out for me when I needed that assistance. And also, Triscina, you were referencing the fact that you reached out, or I'm not sure whether it was Triscina or Sherry, reached out to, or Candy Shannon reached out to you. One of the very first calls that I made, when Candy Shannon came to Washington, D.C., I reached out to her and said, welcome. And I have done that, and I haven't worked in very many markets. But what I did want to ask, many of you women, you have worked in a lot of different radio markets. And I think that the listening audience here today would like to know what kind of impact that was for you, moving from city to city, because that's something that I never wanted to do. And I've been in Washington over 45 years. And the reason that I never left was because I didn't want to hop from city to city. I started out in New York. I worked in New York City. I was LIB Hal Jackson, and that was before it was LIB FM. That was my mentor, Hal Jackson. And then, of course, I was at the radio station sitting behind Jerry Bledsoe, who eventually came to Washington, D.C. to work at WHUR, who worked along with Candy Shannon and Kathy Hughes. But one of the things that I was opposed to was jumping from city to city. So, what kind of impact did that have on some of you ladies who've worked in many cities around the country?
If I can, Robyn, I felt like I kind of got intercepted there for a second. But if I can, when you're working in Washington, D.C. radio, especially back in the day and listening to a lot of the stories, it's bringing back such amazing memories from back in the day when you could choose your own music and it was all about personality radio. Remember that? You would, select your songs and decide, okay, this is the mood I'm going for, which, Dyana, as you pointed out, Melvin Lindsay was our great friend. And that's one of the things that made that radio format so amazing now, back then up to now. I mean, it was all about the mood. And I think, the personalities got credited for that. But when I think about, the 80s and 90s, WHUR radio and all the other Black radio stations, and they all had their own flavor. It was Chocolate City at the time. And, you know, Washington, D.C. was just bustling. Black power meant something completely different then in DC than it does now. I mean, it's still kind of chocolate, but it's not quite as chocolate as it used to be. And
Milk chocolate.
you know, right, it's kind of milk chocolate, but radio was so important. And you know, I am still with WHUR and I'm so proud of that. And when I go to other markets and listen to the radio, they don't seem as connected to the community, you know, as my radio station is. You know what I mean? WHUR has always been so community focused, and you know, we've had some major things happen over the last few years. And when they do, you know, WHUR has and I think will always be that heritage station when you need to know what's going on, particularly in the Black community. People rely on us, and I think we take it seriously. So that I don't think is ever going to change.
So I want to bring Linda Reynolds into this conversation, because I just want to say, first of all, before I do that, I want to tell Robyn Holden, you were the very first female voice that I ever heard on the radio, ever. And that made a major impact on my life. Mm-hmm. But Linda Reynolds, I have to say, you and I, Sam the Man Burns, we were DJs, club DJs back in the day. And we used to talk about you, Linda Reynolds, all the time, because you were the one that always played the new music. And we would listen to you all the time. And Sam would call me, yeah, well, Linda Reynolds just played. I mean, seriously, tell us about, you know, what it was like for your experience in WHUR.
Well, it's funny to me because I'm just thinking back, they trusted me to play music that I liked, that I'm assuming everyone else liked. And I believe it was Sam Burns, may he rest in peace, Sam Burns, who got me to join a record pool so that I would really be up on the newer music. So although I was playing some of it that was new, it was he made me kind of like, you needed to join a record pool so you really know what the new music is. So it's just so funny to me that I was trusted to play that music. Of course, we did have the list and we did have things that we had to play, but there were also things that we could play on our own, which is extra funny because now I also play my own music. I program my own show, which is, they still trust me. I don't know, this is a good thing. But yeah, that was quite an experience. And I loved music. I loved music more than I loved radio. So I always felt that I was in radio for the music. Just my theory.
Okay, I'm gonna do something very special right now because I think it's just overdue, long overdue. We're gonna do a tribute to the female program directors and music directors of Black radio in Washington, D.C. And we have some of them on the panel. Some of them I didn't know until recently, but we've compiled a list. And if there's somebody that we have left off, just let us know, leave a message in the comments. And also thanks to everybody who's tuning in. We really do appreciate you watching. But the first one we're gonna talk about is Jamila Muhammad, who was a program director at WMMJ. And she's no longer with us, but she programmed that station just immaculately. I mean, she really, really did a great job with that station. I listened to it all the time and she kept my interest all the time. The second person on this list, this is very personal for me, is Barbara Prieto. She was the program director at WKYS when I was the music director. And I have to tell this story because it's the truth. When they created this assistant program director position at KISS, I had been at KISS as music director for about 3 years, but they brought Barbara Prieto in from WGCI to be the assistant program director. And I was a little upset, you know, because I felt I should have got that gig. I was upset until I met Barbara Prieto and we just clicked. And I learned so much from Barbara, about music research, the selective programming, strategy. There's a lot of things that I learned from Donnie Simpson. I learned a lot from Donnie and Barbara, and then Barbara just enhanced everything that I learned from Donnie, and it made me a better programmer. So shout out to you, Barbara Prieto. Also, Kathy K.B. Brown. She's the music director of WMMJ WKYS. What can I say about KB? She is a beast at programming. I mean, she really, really programmed Magic 102.3. And I have to tell this story also because KB worked with me at World Space Satellite Radio. And I was honored to have Candy Shannon as my morning drive jock, Kathy KB Brown as my afternoon jock, and the lovely and talented Angela Stribling as my image voice. And they have my station sounding spectacular. So shout out to you ladies, and special shout out to Kathy Brown. Also on this list of program directors is Candy Shannon, program director of WDCU. I had no idea that Candy was a program director until about 2 weeks ago when we were talking, and she had mentioned it to me. And that's one of the things that Grove and I want. The reason that we created this panel is because we wanted people to know about the history behind these women. Some of the things that you might not know. You hear them on the air all the time, but there are a lot of things that these women have contributed that the average person doesn't know. I didn't know Candy Shannon was program director until recently. So Candy Shannon, WDCU. Dyana Williams, program director and music director at WMMJ. And as she said earlier, she was the very first program director of WMMJ. Also, Robyn Holden, she was a program director at WOL. And I have to send a special shout out to Angelique Austin. She is currently the program director, operations manager at WPGC. And she is the first woman in the history of WPGC to oversee programming. All of these years that WPGC has been on the air, this is the first time they had a woman in charge of programming. So shout out to you, Angelique, big baller, shot caller, much respect to you. Tracy Luttrell. Hello, Tracy Luttrell. I have so much respect for this woman. I mean, she has been at HUR. She's the assistant program director at HUR. She's been there for years. I had the pleasure of working with her at Sirius XM. At the time, it was XM Satellite Radio. And this was at the very start of satellite radio. As a matter of fact, Tracy and I were one of the first pioneer program directors of satellite radio history. Tracy had a channel called The Flow, I think it was. And my channel was Ngoma, the African music channel. And we worked together, putting our channels together. But Tracy's doing a fantastic job at WHUR. A special shout out to her. After Tracy, we have Libby Lawson. She was the program director at assistant program director at WHUR back in the day. Robyn Gilstrap was the music director at WKYS before I got there. And last and certainly not least is Pamela Hall. She was the music director of WHUR. Pamela was a very dear friend of mine. She passed away, and we worked together at World Space Satellite Radio. And she programmed a channel called RIP, which was a jazz channel, and she programmed it masterfully. So shout out to you, Pamela. I miss you dearly, and your legacy lives on. So ladies, if there's anyone else, any other female program directors you all might want to mention at this time that we missed, just feel free to chime in right now.
Yes, Greg, I just want to say I worked at World Space under Ray Boyd, and Pam Hall was a music director there too. And that was quite an exciting thing at that time for me too. But one person I like to recognize is Terry Avery. I'm in Atlanta right now, and let me tell you something. Terry is doing a fantastic job. She's taken WKYS to #1, and I just wanted to give her that love too, that recognition, because she is doing a great job of programming KISS 104.1.
Okay, anybody else? Any other program directors or music directors we may have missed?
Well, actually, when I was hired in Baltimore, I also served as the music director there.
Oh, what station was that, Christine?
WWIN 99.5.
Okay, cool. Anybody else? Okay, well, let's change the topic to how important is it to be versatile in terms of your on-air presentations, in terms of the marketplace. You know, I know most of you have your backgrounds in R&B, urban radio, but is it important to know how to do other genres, other types of radio? Anybody have any ideas or any want to express any opinions on that?
I'll speak up if I can. Okay. You know, there are all kinds of people in this business. So there are people who are versatile and can play any kind of format and become a part of wherever they are. And there are also people who just believe in what that, and I think something like what Linda said, who feel they have a mission, or it's the music, there's something about what it is they do. I think either way can work, as long as, and this was a hard lesson for me to learn, you've got to really come from the real you. You know, the real you might be I've worked multiple formats, absolutely. I'm from Detroit, as I think I mentioned earlier, and my first radio job was as a newscaster. And I can remember when the station was sold, we were all out of work, but I got a call back from the now program director, who invited me to do midnight to 7 a.m. And it was an AM station. It had been an all news AM station, WCAR. But the new owner was Golden West Broadcasters out of California, and they turned it into a pop station, AM, 11:30 a.m. And all the songs were like 3 minutes or less. And all of a sudden I had to learn how to ad lib. I had been a newscaster before that. I always had a script. This was one of the hardest things. And I guess I have to, a guy named Grant, I can't ever remember his last name. He took time with me, and he would come into work as I was getting off, which meant early for him. And he would make me listen to myself. And oh, what if that wasn't torture? It's still hard to hear yourself. I don't know if my fellow ladies feel the same way. It's still hard, but I can listen critically. Then I still remember just feeling embarrassed and chagrined. So his words of wisdom to me, and for all of us still in the business, working, I took it to heart, but it still took me a while to learn. Number one, he said, keep air checking yourself. But number two, he said, when you hear something that makes you cringe, stop doing it. Don't do that anymore. Stop doing it. Don't worry so much about things that don't make you cringe, because you're more yourself when you're not doing stupid stuff. And then the real you will start coming out. I think there are, just like radio is a job, especially when you're doing a job 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. Who's on all the time, really? So as a professional, you're going to, maybe you really don't feel like doing it this time. This time you're getting up and being there by 5, whatever time you're on. But you put on your headsets, you open the mic, and you've got to find that place where all the other stuff goes away and you fall and you get into what it is you're doing. I think all the people that you brought together here who have been and are still successful, because they do share their real selves, not everything about yourselves, but what the real self is that you are when you open the mic and put on headsets. And one other thing I'd like to say, and I think it was Angela who talked about WHUR being a community station. Our days at KYS, that was an amazing time, as you probably remember, Greg. But I know a lot of the success it had also had to do with the ability to reach out into the community. Definitely WPFW, which not everybody listens. That's a whole nother kind of a broadcast facility. But the people on the air, all of whom are volunteers, make it feel it's important to be a part of the community that listens. My concern today is that, okay, I just retired from Howard University, and I was there after the radio. I came back to Howard in 1998, and I just retired. And so that was 24 years of teaching in what was radio, TV, film, and now media, journalism, and film in the Kathy Hughes School of Communications. But I would go to class at the beginning of the semester. Oh my goodness, it's coming up, and I'm not going to be doing this. And I would ask students, what's your favorite radio station? Now, when I started, everybody had an answer. Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Today, I will get blank looks. You know, it's
radio.
Like, what? So I'll say, okay, you're in the car with your folks. They're driving somewhere. They reach forward and, oh yeah. And they can tell me. They know what radio is. But I hope that all of them, you know, somebody's paying their phone bills, most of these students. So when they have bills and they're working, I mean, I have to say streaming and the internet radio and all of that is one thing, but it still does not take the place of the relationship that listeners are able to create with those voices on the air. And when you have people like the women that you've put together here, who, especially if they have the ability to play what they believe in, they're curators. They're curators of the music. They take it seriously and they help you understand. I mean, I've listened to everybody here at some point who've all taught me things. I can think of other people, both in Detroit and here, that taught me about artists, about the music itself, about producers. And young people don't get it in the same way. And I think that's a loss. Somehow we've got to find ways to make radio, and we've got to protect it too, because my fear is that someday the frequency will just turn into all internet, everything. And will they keep the human connection, speaking, telling the stories? When many of you were here when DC was struck by an earthquake back in,
Right.
you remember that?
Yes.
2011.
So I was at work in my office in the CB Powell building, and nobody exactly knew what was going on. But finally, somebody, you know, because what's going on? And so next thing I know, the security, campus security knocking on doors, get out of the building. Actually, my sister in California said, you're not supposed to run outside during an earthquake, but okay. So we're all outside. Nobody can go back in the building, but nobody knew what was going on. And I'll never forget, one of my colleagues, Judy Morlata, went to her car because phones weren't working. You know, nobody could get anything. She went to her car, turned it on, and turned to the all news station, and then came and told everybody what was going on.
Wow.
That was radio, not the internet. It was the ability to reach. All you need is the ability to connect with a player. And they were going to take radios out of cars at one time. I think the NAB stood up and said no, which is good. But I hope we're really not a passing of an era, but I think an era has passed. But somehow the quality and the importance of local radio, satellite radio, okay, that's fine. But local radio that speaks to a community, that's licensed to that community, really needs to always be here, especially for communities. You know, we all grew up when Black radio was Black radio, and that's where we could listen to the general market radio. But if you wanted to know what was happening in the community, you had to turn to your local Black radio station. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
No, well, let's
Candy,
open up this.
I love this so much. I mean, when just listening to you speak right now, Candy, I'm thinking about as a little girl listening to radio and what it meant to me. And I really felt like if I didn't listen to the radio, I don't know what's going on. I didn't have any connection. And you're right. I mean, kids these days have so many choices. They can just, live all day from their phone, but they are missing what's going on in the community. Some fun things that, the radio station has a promotion going on that, they might be interested in. So many things like that. I don't see radio as a dying breed. If people, maybe they need to be reminded of what's so amazing about it. Again, I just felt like if I didn't hear it on the radio, it was like air. I felt so disconnected from everybody. And I think radio still has that.
It's still making money. Look at it. It is still making money. I subscribe to, various newsletters, but the fact of the matter is there are fewer Black-owned radio stations today than there were in the 70s and in the early 80s. Kathy Hughes bought up a lot of Black-owned radio stations in various markets, and more power to her. But not other Black stations didn't pop up. We're real fortunate in this market. So we're just putting it out here on the internet that let's hope people don't lose a connection to broadcast radio in the markets. You remember, if you traveled, as soon as you got into another market, you would go find a station and it would sound a little different. I remember going to Atlanta and it sounded different, but you heard stuff that was part of Atlanta's sound. And definitely when I moved to DC compared to my hometown, this was entirely different. And I had to learn and get in, and it helped me learn how to say certain street names and places to go. You make a mistake and say something wrong and everybody looks at you like, where are you from? And
local radio
again.
Local radio still has a significant place, especially in a unique place as the DMV. And I applaud the station that I worked for close to 30 years, community-based. And the thing is, you have to give listeners a reason to tune in, to find out what's going on in the community, what's going on from a news perspective, from our perspective. So to me, local radio is still alive, and there's a place for it. There always will be a place for it if you stay in tune and engage to the community, to what the listeners need and what the listeners want. You have to hear their voice as well. Just as much as they listen to our voice, we have to listen to what they want. And, I'm blessed to say that being a part of WHUR for so many years, and they're still connected to the community. And it's extremely important. So local radio is alive. It's just that you have to constantly find creative ways as we move with the times to stay engaged, especially with social media now being a large part. So
I would like to address this question to Linda Reynolds and Angela and all the other ladies who are currently on the air. What is the effect of social media right now on radio?
All right,
from back in the day. I just know when I was at WKYS, when I was in radio, we didn't have social media. That wasn't even a thing. So now, how do you operate now on the air in this age of social media?
The funny thing is they encourage us to be on social media. So I'm on everything I'm on, mostly because I don't want to say I have to, but it's actually kind of cool because I get to communicate back and forth. I tell them what song I'm going to play, and they have a way of contacting me. But social media is extremely important. I'm trying to be better. I do post a lot, but I'm just not so great with the videos. I just don't particularly care for it, but I guess I'm going to have to learn to get better at it.
We're radio.
I know.
But you know what, Linda? I love the fact that you do post, and I check out your post, and you show your comedic side, which a lot of people might not know that about you. But if you follow Linda Reynolds on social media, it's so entertaining. Isn't she great? And so, Greg, to answer your question from my perspective, my radio show is Pillow Talk with Angela. It's all about relationships. I mean, and we all we all need information and advice and help in that area at some point or another. And social media is such a big component to what I do, because sometimes people would be a little less inclined to call a radio station and say, okay, well, I don't know, my boo and I haven't had sex in a year or whatever the case might be. However, on social media, even though everybody can see their profile, they're a little more inclined to just tell the truth about what's really going on. Second to that, I mean, as I think it was Candy talking about, just the difference between where we are in radio now versus back in the day, social media offers, yet another place for people to give their attention. And so we're competing with, everything, music, streaming services, everything. But I think through social media with radio stations, it's kind of a requirement for most of us to be on there, because, if you can't beat them, join them, make it work for you. And we're kind of meeting people where they are and saying, okay, yeah, this is cool. Okay, while you're on here, turn on this radio station, put on 96.3 while you're scrolling. I think it's important because you get to piggyback off of their numbers and help to build your own.
So anybody else want to contribute? Okay.
I want to say one quick thing though. I don't know, I should be afraid to say it almost, but do you know that I answer every email that my listeners send to me? Everything. I've been doing it for years. And the reason I do it is because that's the way I want to be treated. So that's how I've established a great audience. Sometimes I get to meet them, which is, it's so wonderful to actually meet them, because, we're in the little box and nobody really gets to meet anyone, but it's so important to have that connection with your audience. And
yeah,
I'm glad that
I'm with you too, Linda. I do the same. I think I do the same thing too, because again, just in building, I think most of us do that. If you do your own social media, for me, I'm just so happy that people are listening and they're paying attention. And sometimes it's a lot of emails, and I, kudos to you for doing that too. It's a lot sometimes, but it's worth the investment, because they really feel, right? They feel like they've got access to you as opposed to just a voice on the radio. And that's what I want. I'm like, listen, I'm doing this for you. The whole radio station is because of you. Without you, we are absolutely nothing. Yeah. So, not only do I do it. I'm sorry, Dyana.
No, I was saying radio is such an intimate format, at least for me. I love the relationship. What does radio do? What do? We inspire and we inform. That's primarily what we do. We are clarion voices in our community, dispensing information. It may be something as simple as, pray you woke up on the right side of the bed. And if you didn't, I've got music and information to make a difference in your day. People relate to our lives and experiences, things that we may share. I'm getting ready to go on vacation. I can't wait. I'm going to miss y'all, but I'm going to be listening online to this station when I'm on vacation, believe it or not. So we cannot put the genie back in the bottle. Technology exists. The internet is not going bye-bye. And if anything, radio, I believe, especially the intimate relationship that we develop with listeners, that's not going anywhere. And there's a demographic and ages of people who radio is still very important to them, in their car, in their office. Yes, as Angela mentioned, they have opportunities elsewhere, streaming services, internet radio stations, everything. But how about a hodgepodge of all of it? Black radio, as it exists, commercial Black radio, will always be, as far as I'm concerned, a very integral part of the Black community, because of how we deliver the music and how we share the culture. It's just different with Black radio than it is on the internet or anywhere else, in my opinion. I mean, look, I have little radio antennas in my body as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? I'm guest hosting on WHUR. Back, Greg, to the question about diversity as a broadcaster. I believe that all of us have the capacity to do European classical music if necessary. Right now, I'm doing talk radio. The bulk of my experience as a broadcaster has been doing urban radio, Black music. But I also did rock radio in DC, 1978 at WMAL, which became WRQX. It was the ABC owned and operated station. I'm an Afro-Latina from Harlem. I played the heck out of that rock music. Okay. And I had to program my own show. And it's not the cultural experience that I had, the music growing up as a young girl in New York. For me, it was WWRL and WABC. So, but I was a broadcaster. I felt confident of being able to do any format. And I still feel that way being on the air doing talk radio at WURD, which is Black owned, all talk, and owned by a Black family, a Black woman, Sarah Lomax, program director, Tiffany Bacon. So, you know, if you are in fact a true broadcaster, you can do anything from
Yeah.
talk to news,
Can I jump in here I'm sorry, can I jump in here just for 1 second? One of the things that I am afforded by being at WPFW is the opportunity to bring the varying format musically together in one program. My program is called Robyn's Place. And in Robyn's Place, what I do is on a weekly basis, do a virtual tour of Robyn's Place, which is, let's say, 4 floors. And on each one of the floors, there is a room that is named after someone who I think is an icon in music. Now, this is where we bring the diversity together. I have the Nancy Wilson room. I have the Tito Puente room. I have the Bessie Smith Blues room. I have the Phyllis Hyman room. I have the Mahalia Jackson room, and many others. So throughout the evening, what I'll do is take people on a virtual tour of each one of those rooms and be able to encompass a bit of that music within a 3-hour program. So if you're in the Bessie Smith Blues room, you're going to hear blues. If you're in the Frank Sinatra room, you're going to hear Frank Sinatra and those. If you're in the Nancy Wilson room, you can hear Nancy, Shirley. If you're in the Mahalia Jackson room, you're going to hear gospel. So what I try to do is bring the variety and the diversity of our community into one program every single week, so that and of course, you know, and I have the doo-wop room. So I'm even able to go back to the Orioles and others who are part of our early music history. And that's being able to bring a bit of each musical culture that we are and have been involved with in one program, because we are many times restricted to one thing, R&B or jazz or blues or gospel. So, you know, that's a part of who I am. The Tito Puente room, Dyana, I have the Tito Puente room. So in any given evening, you're going to go to 3, 4, maybe 5 rooms in Robyn's Place that I feel is going to touch on the various folks who have that some connection with each one of those musical genres. And, you know, I even have the blue, what do you call it? I call that room the Broadway. So you'll hear Eliza Minnelli or Barbara Streisand, you know, maybe just 3 songs in each one of those rooms, so that, you know, I can reach out to the community that is listening to Robyn's Place and open up for those who are not necessarily familiar with and I think this last week I did Tito Puente, I did Eddie Palmieri, and a number of others. So, you know, we have to be creative for those of us who have that opportunity. to do so, to be able to engage our community in a full measure. End of conversation.
Okay, I'd like to just at this point just mention the fact that Dyana Williams is one of the driving forces behind creating Black Music Month. So Dyana, you want to talk about that? Because I think that's something that our listeners will want to know about.
Thank you, Greg. Well, I want to give credit to the co-founders, my ex, Kenny Gamble, who it was his original idea after a visit to Nashville, Tennessee, when he observed how organized and together the Country Music Association was. They had a Country Music Month. He felt that the same needed to happen in the Black community, and also broadcaster Ed Wright. Black Music Month is now in its 43rd year. I am a proud board member of the National Museum of African American Music in Nashville, Tennessee on 5th and Broadway. And why is it important to celebrate a specific month? It's a concentrated period of time for us to recognize everybody on this call today. Our contributions to the culture, pushing forward, sharing information about the artists, the songwriters, the producers. I mentioned earlier Diane Quander, who wrote Caught Up in the Rapture. She's one of us. She came from us. And then she went on to write a classic, timeless song from one of our greatest voices, Anita Baker. So Black music, we celebrate it every single day, and particularly those of us who are still on the air, and even in the past. Our contributions to pushing forward the culture and making people aware of the need to appreciate talented people, the engineers, the producers, the songwriters, the record executives, the DJs and the clubs. All of these people are important, and we celebrate Black music every single day, Greg.
Thank you, Dyana.
Before we go on, I want to take time to recognize our audience. So I want to give a shout out.
Okay, Grover, your mic is distorted for some reason.
Is it?
Yeah, it's distorted.
Okay, well, come back to me then.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do right now is, because we are celebrating the legendary ladies of DC radio, there are so many women that are not on this panel, and I'm going to give the ladies on the panel a chance to recognize and acknowledge some of those women. But Grover and Sherry and myself compiled a list, and if you're listening, watching, I should say, feel free to leave a comment if you feel there's someone else that needs to be on this list, because we realize we can't cover everybody. You know, it's impossible, but we want to acknowledge the contributions of as many of these Black women as we possibly can. So we're going to kick it off with Michelle Wright, and we spoke about her previously. We invited Michelle to be on the panel, but we didn't hear from her. But we cannot deny what Michelle Wright has contributed to Washington, D.C. She worked at WPGC, WMMJ, and WHUR. Also, Robyn Breeden, WPGC. Jeannie Jones, WKYS. Reed Teller, WDJY and WKYS. Jackie Gales Webb, WHUR Gospel. My girl, Lisa, love me some Lisa, WHUR. Steph Lover, I'm sorry, Lisa, WKYS. Steph Lover, Steph Lover, WKYS. Amira Graves, WKYS. I worked with her when she was at KYS, and she's a very talented young lady. Nonchalant, I mean, she's a rapper, a hip hop artist, but she's a bomb on the air. A lot of respect for Nonchalant. Big Jagger. Let me just say something very quickly about Big Jagger. I was in my car one day and I heard her on the air and she mentioned her name. I thought she said her name was Mick Jagger, and that's what caught my attention. And I immediately, it just got me, you know, like, whoa, this is Big Jagger. But anyway, I fell in love with her on-air presentation. I mean, I thought she I became a fan listening to her. So shout out to you, Big Jagger. I really, really like your style. Also, let's see, coming up next, we have Leah McDowell, WHUR, Felicia Ledesma, WDJY, Gwen Franklin, WHUR, Sheila Eldridge, WHUR, Dana Stevens, WPGC, Wendy Williams, we talked about her earlier. A lot of people don't know that Wendy Williams was here in Washington, D.C. at WOL before she became the Wendy Williams on the Wendy Williams Show. She was here.
And WBLS. WBLS.
Yeah, what we're talking about right now, DC,
radio.
but she's on DC. A lot of people just didn't know that.
I was
Oh, yeah.
for a hot second, Greg, at WOL.
Oh, okay. Okay, and y'all done threw me offline. Okay, Pat Lawson Muse from
Sorry.
WOL. Pat Lawson Muse, WOL. Ida Campbell, WPFL. I'm sorry. Gloria Menard, WHUR. Gwen Redding, WDCU. Sandra Butler Truesdale, WPFW. Millie Ware, WPFW. Danielle Irby, WKYS. I work with Danielle at WKYS, and Danielle is a true professional. She's with WKYS News, and she's like a true professional in every sense of the word. So a special shout out to you, Danielle. Renee Nash at WHUR. I mean, come on, Renee Nash, all of just everything that she's brought to this community. Hats off, much respect to you, Renee. And Karen Campbell. Come on, y'all. We got to give it up for Karen Campbell, WHUR News. When you talk about radio news in DC, how can you not talk about Karen Campbell? I mean, just excellent personified. Andrea Bray, WOOK News. J. Marie Morris, WOL. And Karen Gray Houston. So ladies, is there anyone else that you feel that needs to be acknowledged right now? Just chime in, let us know.
I would like to shout out a couple people. So, I'm with WHUR, and Autumn Joy, who holds down the midday. That woman is so talented. And she came into this market. She's from this market, and she, had worked here before. But a couple years ago, anyway, she's amazing. And also Nina Brown, who co-hosts with Frank Ski in the afternoon. She sounds so good every day. And Vicki Saunders, she's behind the scenes, Professor Vicki Saunders heads up our HD stations. And, a lot of the folks behind the scenes, you don't really get to hear about all the amazing things that they're doing, but thanks for allowing me to shout them out.
There's also Sonia Ford from WHUR.
Right. I forgot about Sonia.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And also Jackie Allen worked at WHUR as well. And let's see. And of course, we can't forget the amazing promotions directors, Darlene Jackson.
Oh, yes.
There are a lot of behind
girl
that collectively make stations work.
Oh, my goodness.
We're going to throw that out. Let's throw out a shout out to Vivian Rasco, because I work with her.
Yes.
And I know she was at WHUR too. So hello, Vivian. Yeah. Shout out to you.
Vivian's awesome.
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go, Candy.
Oh, sorry. Shoot. Well, Fane Williams was the first and last morning person on WDCU, which doesn't exist anymore, but at UDC, she has a wonderful voice, a wonderful relationship with her listeners. And there was somebody else you just said. Oh, phooey, it'll come back to me. But I'm remembering Fane at WDCU. Okay.
I got a couple more.
Come on with it.
Angie.
Angie.
Oh, did we say Robyn Breeden?
Yeah, we mentioned Robyn Breeden. Yeah. We can mention her again.
Stephanie Gaines Bryant.
And Edith Smith, who was general manager at WDCU, but she also worked at HUR as, I think, promotions person.
Yes.
Edith Smith.
Oh, Erica Blount.
And there's also Jean Ross and Shirley Strawberry.
Oh, yeah, Shirley Strawberry. Did Shirley Strawberry work in DC? She's a part of the Steve Harvey Morning Show.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess that technically is, DC.
And then
DC.
Yeah.
Then you have people like Wanda Williams and Jeanette.
Oh, yeah.
Over in sales. And
yes, Jeanette Ties.
Yeah.
No, Shawneen Thompson. TC. Oh gosh, the names. All these names are bringing back such great memories.
You mentioned Dana Stevens, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Who?
I think we did. Dana Stevens. But we can mention her again.
There you go.
But anybody else have anything they want to contribute? Because we're going to close this out pretty soon. So if you got anything else, anybody else you want to recognize, this is the time to do it. And Grover, is your microphone working now?
Let me try it again. I tried a different mic.
No,
How's that?
it's not working. It's not working.
It's not working?
No, it's not working. But anyway, we're going to be closing this out pretty soon. But what I'd like to know is,
Is this one still?
No, you're not working. It's not working, Grover. It's distorted.
Hello.
It's distorted. But ladies, what the last question that we're going to ask you is, what advice would you give any female that would like to get into the radio business today? And all of you, I mean, I would like to hear every single one of you chime in. Let's start off with Linda Reynolds. You first.
Okay. Well, I'm partial because I learned everything about radio at WHUR, but I was in all departments. So at some point I was in the traffic department, I was in the copy department, I was in production, which I loved, and I ended up on the air. And it's very important to learn everything that you can about radio. I mean, you might want to go on the air, but you also might find out that you may fall into something else. But it's just go for it and name it and claim it. If it's something that you want, it'll be yours.
Okay, Robyn, Holden, how about you? What advice would you give any female that's trying to get into the business today? Is Robyn there? Okay, how about Scharmaine Foster?
Well, you know, Greg, I'd have to say that radio today is a totally different, it's totally different than what we are used to. People that are students that are taking communications to graduate with a communications degree. So I would have to say that they would have to be very creative and find other platforms like social media to get them started, which is also a very big thing to be discovered. So I would have to say to be creative in terms of utilizing your skills if one's going to school. But if there's something that they want to do, just be persistent and pursue it. And that's pretty much the way I feel about it.
Okay, Candy Shannon, how about you?
Yeah, I hope that there are young women who are maybe being inspired here or are radio listeners. So number one, I would say, listen to the radio because after what I said, but listen to the radio, because to want to be in radio, none of us can guarantee that you will find that you're going to get wealthy doing radio necessarily, or that you might not have to work multiple jobs and travel and go to different stations. We didn't talk about that as much, but that's part of broadcasting, whether it's TV or radio. You've got to be flexible, but you've also got to listen. Another thing I would suggest is if you find somebody that you connect with, if you hear another woman, but even if it's not a woman, I would reach out and try to create, if you can find someone who will mentor you, who will talk to you about opportunities, give you suggestions, that is another pathway in, is what you're looking for. If somebody is not willing to mentor you, please don't be discouraged. You've just heard from a group of women here who are interested in affording opportunities in this business. We all have had our own measure of success. Yours is there. After I had my little speech, I'm so heartened to know that everybody here knows radio is not going anywhere. So get your piece, find a mentor, listen, and then find ways to make you come out, develop your presentation.
All right, Olivia Fox, how about you? What advice would you give females trying to get in the game today, the radio game?
The number one piece of advice would be to be you. Find out who you are and what type of personality you want to be, and represent that to the fullest. Be unique, be creative, and always learn. Sometimes we get to a certain level of success and we feel like, you know everything, or, Oh, I know that, but you always learn, always research. And that's really with anything, not just radio, but that's really in any industry, to always continue to learn. And then I think the next biggest would be learn how to manage your money. And if you don't know how to invest, hire someone who does. So if you're in a situation where you're not working and you have investments, you can live and not be freaking out. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Triscina Gray, how about you?
Well, like Olivia said, be who you are, stay true to who you are, and don't sell yourself short. And also remember your value and your worth. And don't compare yourself to anyone else, because you are who you are. Be conscious of the competition, but be creative with what you need to do in the market that you're in. Know who you are talking to, know your listeners, know your demographics, and have fun, you know, and don't stay stuck, you know, for years, many years. I mean, there were so many things happening throughout the years. I couldn't be one of those, well, this is how we used to do it. No. I don't want to do that, because this is how. No, you have to continue to evolve, be open-minded. And, you know, I mean, there were so many advances with technology that happened throughout, especially working at WHUR with a general manager, Jim, who also had the gift of being an engineer. So WHUR was always extremely.
You're talking about Jim Watkins, right?
Jim Watkins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So with that in mind, you had to receive and be open and just learn and continue to evolve. And, you know, the thing is, it's not just in the studio. You have to go beyond the studio. All right. Know how to do commercials. Do the best you can in all assets and in all aspects, like Linda said, you know, production, commercials, voiceovers. Go outside the studio, be engaging, connect to the community. Know how to work the stage when you're emceeing a concert. And don't think that you're bigger than your listeners. You know, you have to treat them like they matter. Don't take the ego out of it and stay humble. You have to stay humble, and you know, you can't be fake, because the listeners will pick that up too. So,
all right, Robyn Holden, are you there? Is Robyn there? Okay, how about Angela Stribling? How about you? What kind of advice would you give a female trying to get into the radio game today?
I'm glad you asked, because I give a lot of advice. But you know what, before I do that, if I could backtrack a little bit, I want to shout out a few more females.
Oh, please do.
Okay, great. Kokalani, who holds things down on Saturdays on WHUR. Taylor Thomas used to be at HUR doing the news. Molette Green, Candace Atkins, and I'm sure there are plenty more that I have overlooked, and I'm sorry if you're watching and I didn't say your name, but those ladies are definitely deserving. So yeah, I do mentor a lot of young women, and some not so young, but people know, you know, one of the things that when I started out in radio, it was at a time that a lot of females were not doing voiceovers. And it worked out great for me, because I had kind of a dual career where I was selling advertising, you know, not clients from an advertising agency, but I mean, knock on the door to the mom and pops. So you had to kind of do everything. You write their commercial, voice their commercial, and ended up, you know, entering into the voiceover industry. So a lot of people will contact me and say, how do I do this? Or how do I, you know, get into the whole radio industry? And everything that all of these amazing women on this panel have said is true. You know, you've got to just really go for it. And I think, I don't know if it was Olivia or Scharmaine who said, you know, just know that you belong there, you know, go for it, really go for it, and know that you too can have a seat at the table. And as Triscina said, don't sell yourself short. Yes, it is an industry that is still a favor to males. I mean, that's corporate America, that's across the board, but that doesn't mean that you have to go in like that. go in there asking for the moon if you feel that, when you feel that you're ready. I mean, don't start off asking for the moon or you'll never break it. That's where the humility really comes in handy. Go in there. When I started out in radio, I knew I didn't really know anything about it, but I felt like if anybody wants to take a day off, I'm here. I had the maybe, just brave and had the courage, but definitely, you've got to have that hunger and that drive to be able to, to work long hours and not really get paid very much. And that means that you love it enough to do it, not as a job, but you do it because you love it. So do what you have to do, work really hard in the beginning. But once you get established and it's time to get that promotion, your boss is not going to knock on your door and say, oh, hey, you know what, you've been doing so great, we're going to give you some more money. Oh, no. You got to knock on that door and say, you know what, my listenership has increased from here to here. How about let's have this conversation? Don't be afraid to do that because you are worth it. And it is a business and, money is the bottom line. So everybody needs to make money. The radio station is there to make money. And if you're there bringing in more listeners, more, advertising opportunities, then you should get a share of the pie. So that's my 2 cents.
So Dyana Williams.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dyana Williams, would you just give us your advice that you would give to young ladies trying to get in the industry today? You're muted, Dyana.
I know that we are up against the clock, so I say that I echo the sentiments expressed by my fellow sisters and be passionate in your purpose as you pursue your destiny, manifest what you have in your mind to do, find a mentor, as was stated previously. And I want to take a moment to say to Greg, to Sherry, and also to Grover, thank you for this opportunity to bring us together. I have great admiration for all the women on this panel in this discussion. And super serve the Black community and always be mindful of serving Almighty God. For if we're not for God, none of us would be here.
Right.
So thank you for the opportunity. Right. Shout out to Robyn, Olivia, Triscina, Candy, also to Scharmaine, and David, thank you for your assistance. And my beloved sister, who I've been writing with for a long time, Angela Stribling. Thank you all. Blessings.
If my mic
is Robyn here? Is she here?
Robyn's back.
Okay, Robyn, can you just give your advice? And Grover, I'm glad your mic is working now.
Okay, good.
Yes, I lost the signal for a moment, but I just want to say to all of the beautiful women who have been friends and mentors, either directly or indirectly, thank you for so much that you have contributed to our community and the struggles, the successes. I want all of you to take a moment to celebrate them as we often just continue to move through our lives, because that's what we do. But at some given time, we, of course, first have to thank God. And then secondly, appreciate and understand what beautiful information and life-sharing experiences that we all have shared with our communities, because we want to, and because we are all built for doing what it is that we do. Everybody cannot do what it is that we do. So appreciate yourselves and continue to appreciate the community. And thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you very much.
Hey, Grover, you got something?
Before we go, I want to give a shout out to some of the people in our audience. In particular, Angelique Austin, who has been waiting for a month to hear this show. So shout out again to Angelique.
Hello, Angelique.
Matthew Leaks, good friend. Angie Clary, DJ Lance Reynolds, Tara Jones, Sheldon Taylor, Rhonda Carwell, and Malik Pinckney. Thank you for what you've done tonight. Michelle Martin, Tyrone Hall, And also a friend of this panel, Paul Porter, sent a shout
Paul
out
Porter,
to.
what's up, Paul Porter?
Hey, Paul.
So, we can't get everybody, but I just want to shout out to a few, okay?
Oh, and can I say shout out to Laia St. Clair? She's a DC native who was on the air for many years, so we cannot leave out people born and raised in DC also.
Right, right.
Okay.
I
So
just
Sherry,
want to say something
Sherry?
real quick.
Oh, there she is. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to take a second for all of us ladies here to just embrace the fact that we served as trailblazers for all the people behind us. Those of us who started in the 70s, we paved the way, for radio, for all the young women after us who came on. And we were there for the big switch from AM to FM radio.
Yes.
All right.
In the 70s.
Yes.
You see, and actually we helped change the style of radio, because before us, the jocks, do you remember when they were fast talking, rhyming jocks talking over the music, hotting up and down, but then when we started, I remember listening to Candy, Shannon, and Robyn, Holden, conversational radio, Dyana Williams, conversational. You were talking to us, to communicating with the listener. You see, you weren't putting on a show, and doing all it with all these crazy names. We started using our real names, or names that sounded like they were real names, and not like the Soul Papa and the Moon Man and all that. So, I just want us to take a sec to embrace that, because that's real history. We were there in the beginning, in the 70s. And I'm born and raised in DC, so I was here the whole time. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
I also want to say, as I mentioned before, listening to HUR framed how I listen to music. Definitely starting with you, Dyana, and then you, Robyn, Linda, and Candy. And I listened, I heard some of the other ladies, but I was pretty, I'm gonna just tell the truth here. I stopped listening to radio after a while. How technology, I was making my own cassette, and then I was listening to my CDs or whatever. But then but I know each and every one of you, because I've heard you, like you say, I think somebody mentioned that, I think it was Candy, was saying that some of the kids really, didn't know much about radio. I talk to some of my students sometimes. I ask them, do they listen to radio? He says, yeah, I listen to it when I'm in the car with my mother. And that's a reality. But HUR shaped the way I started listening to music, because also you guys are responsible for me buying albums, because I couldn't get the cuts, the singles, whatever. So you guys turned me on to a whole new style of music. And I'd like to take this time to thank each and every one of you.
Right.
And I would like to say that I love each and every one of you. Each of everybody on here serve as special memories. I remember what was happening in my life when I would listen to Dyana, or when I listened to Robyn. It's just you represented a certain really good time in DC, and I just feel like I'm just so glad to see everybody here, because at one time or another, one point, even if we didn't meet in person, I knew of you, like I knew Linda Reynolds, through a friend, and Candy Shannon. I admired Candy so much. And when I was able to actually work at WKYS middays, because that Candy was just like an idol of mine. And when I got a chance to actually sit in the same chair that she had, where she was, I guess it was the same chair, I don't know, but I know WKYS right after Donnie Simpson in the morning. It just was so special. Robyn, I remember, I probably don't remember hanging out with back in the day with Petey Green and all, and Scharmaine, each one of you are just special to me. And I've known you, Angela, I've listened to you forever. And we have friends in common. So, I'm just glad to see everybody here tonight. And thank you for being here.
And shout out to Chocolate City and the listeners of the DMV and beyond.
Yes.
Chocolate City, Go City,
Yes.
forever, DC.
All of that.
The
I
nation's
love
capital.
your DC. I miss DC so much. I tell you, I'm so full to see everyone here. Greg, thank you for having me on this program with these wonderful sisters. It's so good to see everybody. And Triscina, I know Ann came to your white party, and I want an invitation next year.
Okay. I was just going to say, I was just going to acknowledge Ann Tisdale and also.
Yes, Ann Tisdale.
Yes.
Oh, and I call her,
Yes.
I love
call her
her.
the woman in charge of
Yes.
WHUR.
Always.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's my girl.
And I have a confession to make too. The many years that Olivia Fox was on the radio in the morning. Okay. Going to WHUR, I would push the dial. But I love me some Olivia Fox with her personality, her
Yes,
humor.
yes, yes, yes.
Olivia, there's still so much in you. I am looking forward to seeing you rise. And I know it's going to happen even more. I know I have to compliment you on how innovative you've been, but there's more.
Thank you.
And it's coming because you're a natural with your morning style. You are born to be doing morning radio or whatever.
I appreciate it, Triscina. Thank you. It
But
means
like
a
I
lot.
said, just hearing you, I would listen to Russ Power Morning Show for Olivia Fox. I mean, Russ is cool. I really think he's talented, but I tuned in to listen to Olivia Fox. I mean, she just had that personality that drew me in. But we're going to get ready to wrap this thing up unless Grover and Sherry has anything else to say. But I just want to tell you all, I'm looking at this screen right now. I can't believe these faces that I'm seeing, that we were able to get all of these spectacular women in one space. And it is just my honor to, along with Grover and Sherry, and Sherry included, to give you women the honor and recognition that you deserve. So on behalf of Grover and myself and Sherry, we're including you in this bunch as well. The legendary ladies of DC Radio, thank you so very much for making this a very special evening tonight. So I'm going to record each and every one of you. So with that, I guess, Grover, unless you got anything else to say, I guess that wraps it up, ladies.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Honor.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
And thank everybody out there who
Peace.
tuned in. Thank you so very much for
Yes.
watching. We really do appreciate it.
Be
All right.
well. Peace.